Good evening, everyone. Hello, all of you on Zoom. My name is Barbara Brown, and I'm the chair of the College Area Community Council, and I want to welcome everyone here tonight. This is our second hybrid meeting, so it's great to see everyone in person, and it's also great to see all of you online. For those of you who are new, welcome, and for those of you who've been here before, to give you a little bit of information about who we are. The College Area Community Council is an organization designed to provide a forum for community issues, a conduit for communications with the city, and an opportunity for neighborhood problem solving and planning for the college area. So this is an open forum meeting, and your engagement is both welcome and encouraged. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand physically, or you can raise your hand in the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. You can also provide input or ask questions through the chat, and someone will answer those questions. And I just want to take one moment and thank those volunteers who give so generously of their time and talents to the College Area Community Council. I want to thank Rob Corley, who is our vice chair. I want to thank Eric Rosenberg, who is our treasurer. Kathy Bremer is our secretary. And our members at large include Dina Rogers, who's not here tonight, and also, who am I missing? Oh, Russell Richardson. So we couldn't do it without everyone involved, and they provide a huge amount of talent and energy to the organization, so we really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your commitment to the community. So I want to introduce our first speaker, which is Ventura Police Department, Mike Brown.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see everybody in person instead of on Zoom. I wanted to go over a couple of quick crime stats over the last 28 days. Also like to touch a little bit on the e-bikes, which I talked about last time, and then kind of give you a synopsis about the 4th of July and how that'll pan out. Over the last 28 days, we saw a pretty significant increase in thefts. Thefts from unlocked cars, mostly, and a lot of thefts of bicycles. Most of the hotspots, obviously, were kind of in the mall and shopping centers. A lot of thefts of cell phones, thefts of purses, and a lot of thefts of bikes. So what we see predominantly is that thieves are pretty good at cutting the locks. So if you want to get some stiffer locks, make sure you lock it to something that's nice and sturdy. That can help serve some of the thefts of e-bikes, especially, are very hot commodity. So me personally, I have an e-bike, and I have one of those new Don't Forget About It locks. They're pretty beefy, but the more time it takes somebody to cut the lock, the greater likelihood you are of keeping your property. Also, make sure that nothing inside the car is visible. If you do have items inside the car, make sure they're kind of hidden and out of view. Crimes of opportunity, people go by predominantly with flashlights, and if they see something inside the car, they break the window and take your items. We did see a spike in attempted vehicle thefts. There's a trend on TikTok, especially with Kia cars. And what the thieves are doing is they're breaking a window, they're prying the dashboard because of the push start, and using the end of a USB device, they're able to hotwire that car pretty quickly. So there's a couple of years that are affected with this type of theft. But like I said, it's on TikTok, and it's showing kids how to do this, and we're seeing a spike in vehicle thefts or attempted vehicle thefts. As far as the 4th of July, so 4th of July is usually one of the busiest days at our communication center, and the phone literally rings off the hook nonstop. To kind of give you an idea, there's 796 phone calls that come into the communication center. Of that, 441 of them are calls for service, and 256 of those are fireworks specific. So a lot of fireworks calls. During the 4th of July, we normally have about 20 officers that are normally on patrol. Our total patrol is about 56 people. We bring in an additional 30 officers to help with all of the activities with 4th of July. That's the parade, the street fair, the fireworks, and additional to extra patrols to handle that big spike in 4th of July call, or sorry, fireworks calls. This year we did a pilot program with trying to utilize some of our drones. Like I said, it was a pilot program. It was interesting to say the least. It looks like we're at issue about 10 citations. I know you're probably thinking, well, how can so many few citations? Anytime we launch a drone in the air, we're responsible for that drone. So if a firework or something hits that drone, the drone falls out of the sky and hits somebody, we are responsible for that. So while trying to utilize different things to crack down and enforce fireworks violations, it's something that we're going to take a look at to see if it's worth doing again next year, if we need to expand the program, or if we need to try something else. So any questions on thefts or fireworks before I move on? Yes.
As a city ever looked at using something like the shot collar technology, this is where they have microphones, computer-based microphones, and they can pinpoint their source of the sound. And they use it in some cities for gunshots, where we've had so many problems with people saying, things are a lot stronger than anything. So if we ever did something like that for a people response.
That is a good.
If you could summarize the question again for those.
I'm sorry. The question was using a shot collar, which are speakers that are throughout the city, and when a loud boom or a gunshot goes off, it triangulates that sound, and then it gives us a pinpoint location of where that took place. So shot spotter programs are quite expensive. Some cities have seen very good success with it. Some cities have not. That's not something I think we've really looked at as far as fireworks related calls, but it is something that is definitely something that we can look at in the future. Everything comes down to cost and so forth. But that's an excellent question, and it's something that I'll bring up in the next meeting. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Last night at the police station, when they did the e-bikes, one thing they talked about registering your bikes, and so you've got all these stolen bikes that have to be registered. Actually, we have regular bikes.
So the question was last night at the town hall about registering your bike. Registering your bike is a great idea. Oftentimes when police officers come across people in the street and there's a high likelihood that the bike is stolen, when we run the serial number, unless it's in the system as stolen, we cannot act on that unless we have a good description. If there's something specific about the bike, it's got a fancy paint job, something to identify the bike other than the serial number. So what we do encourage people is when you do get a bike, yes, that would be absolutely great to go on and register it. That way it's with us and we know who the owner is. So when we do find it, we can get back to you. But when you do report a bike stolen, having that serial number is extremely important. So please take a moment, take a picture of it, at least have it in person if you don't choose to register it online. But that absolutely is the best way to do it. Thank you. Yes.
I was curious what the turnout was for the e-bike presentation yesterday. I wasn't able to go, but also I'm a member of the Board of Education for Ventura Unified, and I spoke with Commander Weeks last meeting for the East Side Community Council, and would love to host some of those at our middle schools in particular, because we see a lot of problems with e-bikes on our campuses, and I think often parents are uneducated. So if there's an opportunity to collaborate.
Absolutely. I left some pamphlets at the front door that help explain some of the e-bike laws. Generally, if it doesn't have a set of pedals on it and can be pedaled at a human power, there's probably going to be an electric dirt bike. And one of the things that we can explain to parents is electric dirt bikes are absolutely illegal. The wattage on the motor is extremely powerful. They're extremely fast, and they're actually illegal to be operated on the street. They're for off-road use only. So if you're considering buying your child a bike, make sure that it's either a class 1, class 2, or class 3 e-bike with pedals. If your children are under 16 years of age, then you probably want to stick with a class 1 or a class 2. And for adults, if you are using a class 3 bike, everyone has to wear a helmet. So it can be extremely confusing. A lot of e-bikes you can actually shift between all the different classifications. So just make sure you check that, and especially make sure you operate them in a safe speed, especially on our promenade and bike paths. You can actually get a speeding ticket for riding too quickly and putting people's lives in jeopardy. But as far as the attendance, I can find out and let you know how that was attended.
Oh, yeah. There were probably about 50 people. I was
So Mike, you said over the last 28 days, there's sort of been a spike in crimes. Is that a seasonal thing? Is that an event related thing? Is that advertising there's time for crime in Ventura? I mean, what's causing the spike?
Usually in the summer months, we start to see a little bit of a rise because more people are out and about, kids are out of school and so forth. It just depends, when there's crimes of opportunity, when things are there, people will generally try to take advantage of that, especially around the mall area. There's probably people watching for you to park your bike, watching for people to park and walk away. Just make sure everything's out of view, make sure your car is locked, and just try to make everything as hard of a target as possible.
Good evening. Thanks for all your effort you put into our community. I frequent Costa Mesa, the beach areas, Huntington Beach, Costa Chica quite a bit. Doing some nonprofit stuff, beach events, and they have a lot of traffic, and especially on the weekends, extreme amount of traffic. But I'm telling you, you could physically cross that traffic, and they follow lanes, whether it be foot, skateboard, whatever. You could cross that blindfolded. You would not be run over by that traffic. And I know they've gone to confiscation of the e-bikes, and they've also arrested people. A friend of mine saw a bunch of kids with e-bikes getting arrested in Laguna Beach, and the bikes were loaded up in a trailer. My point is, I think and I'm a daily walker on the promenade for like the last year and a half. I think the only way to get this under control is tell the parents you are responsible. If your youngsters violate the law, you have to have enforcement. You need to take the bike away, confiscate it, and there needs to be some repercussions, because I see kids doing wheelies down the promenade using walkers and kids and dogs, skateboards, just enjoying the day with no rhyme or reason to their traffic flow. And using them basically as pylons as they race through, and regular bicycles as well. I think it's a place for everyone to enjoy, and I'm afraid eventually there's going to be a tragedy down there. I've seen a few, there wasn't a lot of trauma, but I've seen some pretty good crashes. But there's going to be something significant, and then we're all going to go, why didn't we do something? Enforcement is the only. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question, and I absolutely agree. And that was part of the reason we had the community forum open for the e-bikes. Anytime you're riding a wheelie, that is constitute reckless driving, because you've taken the steering mechanism for the vehicle up off the ground. And granted, however talented you may be, it is absolutely reckless driving, which is a misdemeanor, and your bike can be impounded as evidence. As a result of that. So that's why we're trying to educate parents. We're trying to educate everybody else. There's a time and place for that. In public view, where public is walking and so forth, is not the place. Take that to private property where no one else can be hurt. You can do all the tricks that you want as long as you're being safe, but just please not on the street when the bike pass. So thank you. Yes, sir.
That 14 is very Christian on that. Probably. So. When I was growing up, but it's a little thing.
I agree. And if we would have had e-bikes when we were kids, we'd probably be talking about us too. So Yes, sir.
I would just like to point out that it's kind of the performance, the right people, the pocket, stuff.
What I took away from the meeting last night about the e-bikes is that there were 3 police officers giving the presentation, and that seems to be the patrol unit for Ventura PD. So they can't cover the whole city. A private citizen at the meeting pointed out that he sat at the end of the Ventura Moves where the streets closed up to no bikes. He said he counted 18 people riding their bikes down Ventura, down Main Street. The police aren't going to sit there. One police officer is not going to sit there and write 18 tickets. It's just kind of a lack of resources.
So it can be problematic. And as the police department, we're constantly weighing the plus and minuses. The last thing that we absolutely want to keep everyone safe. The last thing we want is to start a chase of a juvenile and then they run into traffic and they get hit by a car. That is absolutely the worst possible scenario. And so we try to balance and make sure that we're trying to keep everyone safe, trying to uphold the law, and making sure that we're doing so in the best regard for the public and the person. But we do have ways other than, we've got other ways that we can mitigate those problems. Well, we just got to be a little creative sometimes and use investigative resources. But we do keep that in mind, and that is part of the tactic. Any other questions? I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
I did want to mention that on the agenda, you'll see, by the way, if you need the agenda, you can look at caccventura.com for a copy of the agenda. And one of our speakers did not show up tonight. And so we have a little extra time. So we are letting speakers run a little bit long. So next I'd like to introduce Vanessa Stotler, who is the Director of Outreach and Marketing, and with her, Ventura College's new president, Dr. Claudia Lourido-Habib. Vanessa?
Hi, everyone. It is a pleasure to introduce our new president. But before I do, I just briefly want to mention that Ventura College launched a nationwide search for a new college president this spring. And it was a very competitive search. We had wonderful candidates, but we were so fortunate to have received a fantastic candidate to join Ventura College and to lead. And so she's here with us today. It's Dr. Claudia Lourido-Habib, who joins us from the most recent college as president at Porterville College. So I just want to invite her up briefly to say a few words.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here. I was a bit surprised that there's this coalition of people coming together, but pleasantly surprised because I'm here partly because, of course, last president of Ventura, so in my role, but also because I'm a new resident here. So I'm a neighbor. I bought a house here, so I'm also interested in the issues that we are all concerned with the city. You want to give you a little overview of my career, or I don't know how much time we have. Okay, just briefly, I don't want to bore you. So yes, I'm excited to be here. I bring with me 5 years of experience as president of another college, but I've been in education for 23 years in higher ed at community colleges. So I started my career actually in the private sector in design. Architecture and interior design were my fields. And after working in that field for about 10 years, I was encouraged to go and teach. And I thought, me teaching? I have an accent, I can teach. But I applied to a job and I started teaching at Fresno City College. which is the institution where I actually learned English. Well, I'm still learning. I learned English. I eventually transferred to California, San Luis Obispo, Fresno State. Like I said, I worked in the design field, and then I went into the teaching field. I worked as a faculty for 12 years, and then I went into the dark side of administration. So I held a couple positions as a dean. The first one was actually over career technical education. So multiple programs from agriculture, natural resources, animal science, auto, aero, maintenance, business, entrepreneurship. And then I went to my dream job at that time, which was being the Dean of Fine Performing Arts, Communications, and Journalism. And I loved it. Those are some of the roles that really shaped my career. But then before I knew it, I was a vice president of a college, a center, and then I went into a presidency. So it's been a great career. I was at a point where I wanted to make a difference in a different community, and I looked across the state. I came undercover a little bit and did some research about the community. I wanted to be in a community that aligned with my personal values, and I felt that this community in Ventura offered me that. So I applied for the job, and here I am. So I'm just enjoying my time. This is my third week on the job. I have met many people, heard many stories, and confirmed that this is the right decision. So again, thank you. And I'm here, of course, to make sure that as a college, we collaborate. I mean, it's not new. They've been doing it. I have an amazing team. But I definitely want you to see me also as your neighbor. Thank you. Any questions? I know this is not my
Welcome.
No. We were very excited and so thankful to have you on board at the college. So some of the campus updates that I wanted to share is a very exciting one. Tomorrow is the start of the Ventura Music Festival, and at Ventura College we will be hosting quite a few of those performances. So that's very exciting, and that will be at the Performing Arts Center on campus starting tomorrow through the 28th, and then again August 2nd through the 24th. So that's something that's very exciting coming to campus, and it begins tomorrow. And it's a wonderful partnership as well that I know Anne's team has worked on. Another one is our classes start on Monday, August 12th. We do have new student events and orientations that have commenced not only this week, but the previous week. We've had wonderful events like our Arrival Survival and orientations that happen on campus. So it's really welcoming our new students for the fall semester, as well as Noche de la Familia, which we've brought a lot of our own students and their families to come and learn more about the campus as well. Great news is that enrollments have increased year over year, but we won't have that final number until our fall, a little closer to census, so later in the fall, but we're really happy with some of the numbers that we're seeing with the increased enrollments. And then one thing that's coming up just around the corner next week on Friday is that mural design contest anniversary deadline. That's coming up August 2nd, 2024. So if you know any wonderful artists who could take some of the history of Ventura College and really design something for us, have them visit the venturacollege.edu mural /mural, excuse me, for them to enter in for that. And for them. And that's all I have, and I'll open it up to any questions. Yes.
What is the status of the dorm?
The question was, what was the stance of the dorms? And the last College Area Community Council, we brought our Vice President of Business Services and Administration, and currently we have hired a design firm as well as in architecture. But that's been the latest in terms of the dorms. We're still working on the project. We're hoping to get more design and information as we come along, but we're happy to have hired a local company that is going to be joining us in the design as well as the entire process.
And I've heard that the target number is about 320 students.
About 320 beds.
Beds,
Yes.
right. And is the money in place?
Yes, money is in place.
So it's just a matter of getting all the steps.
Correct.
Good.
Thank you.
Lower hand, a rose hand. What do we do? Hello.
Question from Catherine.
Hi. I'm remoting in. Can you hear me? I haven't attended before. Okay. It was just regarding the dorm status, and I was wondering where that is planned to be constructed. Is that going to be across from the child care center where that parking lot is below the old pool, or across the street?
Yes, no, that is correct. That's a location that we're looking at, and we're still determining, the location specs, but that is currently where we discussed having the housing project.
Oh, both locations, correct?
No, the exact location is where the old pool location was.
Oh, okay. And does that include the parking lot as well there?
It could be something, yeah, that is added, but we're still determining some more of the design project as well.
Okay. Well, what I just wanted to bring to your attention, and maybe you already know this, but there is a plaque there because that used to be or is still the Ventura College Palm Garden that was established. Well, let's see, it was dedicated to Joseph Sullivan. And so there's a collection of palms. Some of them are looking a little worse for wear right now because they aren't probably getting any watering or attention. It's been quite a while that they've been there, but because there's a plaque there and those palms were dedicated to him, I just was curious what, if any, kind of consideration there might be to addressing that or commemorating that, so and incorporating, if possible, some of that history into the whatever development goes in there, because it'd be a shame for that to just sort of disappear under a bulldozer. There is a plaque, and one or two of, I guess, both of his sons are still alive, and so they'd probably be interested in knowing what might happen to that as well. And I don't know how many of those palms are, where they are in their life cycle, as far as which of them might be able to be transplanted or just retained where they are, or if there are, there's a way that if they are viable, that they could be donated to the Ventura Botanical Garden, or some way of just kind of incorporating that legacy.
I really appreciate this information. I wrote down some notes as you were speaking regarding the plaque for Joseph Sullivan as well as the palms. And so I'm hoping to reach out with more information at this time. I don't have any of those details, but I mean, absolutely, we will want to acknowledge that, as well as learn more about his sons. If you have that information, maybe you can pass that along to me. We are also planning a centennial for the college for the next academic year, 2025 through 2026. So we have 100 years of history here in Ventura. And so I feel like this could have a really wonderful way to really tie that in with our centennial celebration. So thanks again for bringing that to my attention. I don't have any details at this time, but I hope to at future meetings.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I could add a little bit of information. Actually, there is a pretty large task force for the residence hall or the dorms project. In fact, this Friday, we have a 4-hour meeting to discuss mostly the logistics of how we're going to tackle the design process. We have not moved forward on that. In fact, you're right, the number as it is right now stands at about 300 beds. And as a new president, I have to question how did you come up with that number? Can we see how feasible that is? And there was a feasibility study done. So now that we secure the architects that are going to manage the project, we're putting a calendar of activities in place. There will be opportunities for feedback once we determine how we're going to move forward with this process. How many beds? How many single units? I mean, there's a lot to decide. How many stories, single story, 2, 3. The space is tight, so certainly the parking lot is a consideration as we look at the design. I appreciate the information about the palms. I have not walked through the lot, so that's good to go and discover and recognize where the plaque is. And certainly we look for opportunities to create also exterior learning spaces for students, and that may offer an opportunity to acknowledge that history. So more to come, and when we have open forums, we'll sure to let you know, and you can see some preliminary design. Usually there are many phases to the project where you may see some concepts, and then we can tweak them a little bit. So thank you.
Will any people other than students be housed?
No, except maybe because we haven't designed, and actually a few years ago, I actually oversaw dorms, so I have some experience in that. And in that case, we have as a residence the manager of the dorms because we need 24 hours. So we had a model in which we house an employee and family, which was usually the night shift or the 24-hour, and we had 2 managers. So there's a lot that goes to it. But just as a tidbit of information, this project won't be the typical residence hall as most of us, if we lived in the dorms at some point, knew them. There are some conditions that come from the state because this is totally funded by the state, and they want to make sure that we help students with high need, which there are many, as you know. Students are, the need is really high, but certainly right now it's exacerbated. So we will have a basic needs center as part of the building. And I'm so grateful with the foundation putting so much effort in really finding more resources to expand that help to the students. We also have to plan to have spaces for them to study, to get mental wellness counseling, recreational, access to the library, access to food. So there's many aspects of this project. So as you can imagine, the square footage, is a lot. But I'm excited about the project. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to thank you for being here, and thank you. I've been part of the college area community council meeting for a long time now. And the college has always played such a key role in giving us space and always being at our meetings, being there to answer every question. And when we talk about a community college, it is very much a community college. I have taken classes here. My wife has taken classes here. My son has taken classes here. And we're just so thankful to have you and welcome to Ventura.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really thankful to be part of this tradition and to have a centennial to look forward to and celebrate that legacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very enlightening. So next we're going to take a few moments to talk some business. We have a candidate forum, as most of you know, we're in the middle of election season and we have a candidate forum coming up. We're going to be partnering with Midtown Community Council, and right now that date is set for September 12th. 3 districts are running, District 2, District 3, and District 7. CACC boundaries include both Districts 2 and 3, and 7 covers the Pierpont area. So that will be a really great opportunity for us to get to know our candidates. So secondly, I want to thank everyone who's donated to the College Area Community Council as a nonprofit. We have certain fees, our costs are pretty low, but we have some fees we need to pay. And so if you feel like donating, the donation information can be found at caccventura.com. And you can do it, you can use PayPal, you can use Venmo. You can send a check to College Area Community Council, 9452 Telephone Road, number 164, and that's Ventura 93004. All of that information can be found on our website if you're looking. So are there any questions? Jim?
Do you have like a goal that you're setting as far as your fundraising? You'd like to have this amount of donations annually, or to meet the needs of your insurance as a nonprofit? Some of those things that we can see, well, I think we need to like really muster up because there's some shortages here.
Well, I'm going to let Eric answer most of that question.
Thanks,
but
Eric.
one of the things that we do want to be able to have funds for is projects. As many of you know, we've had some really successful projects in the area. We've had projects that would provide food for the food insecure, and that was run by Russell Richardson. We've had the Skyline Project, which special thanks to Jim Ackerman, that was a huge success. We've also planted trees in the college area. So do you want to take it, Eric, from there?
Yeah, so for our overhead, our big goal is about $2,000 a year, which if we look at how many people come, it's not a huge donation for everybody. All the members of the board donate. So yeah, about $2,000 a year covers, the biggest thing is our insurance cost. As we all know, insurance is important. So we have our nonprofit insurance that Adina, who's not able to be here tonight, helps us with the insurance. She made sure we got a special nonprofit insurance plan. So that's our biggest cost. We also pay for Zoom. This year, Bob, who's a board member at Lourido, he's on right there, donated to cover that cost. But that's a couple $100 a year. We have some modest internet costs and things like that. But the biggest is insurance. I know if we get $2,000 a year, we can easily cover everything and have a little bit of wiggle room to grow. And then on top of that, we do our special projects like the Skyline signs that every time I drive by, I'm like, oh, that's our beautiful project we all worked on together. So any project is a kind of a separate fund. We segregate that out as we work through it. But yeah, the big goal is $2,000 a year.
Mike?
Thank you. I wanted to make a donation, but it doesn't really work on my phone, so we'll get that straightened out.
Oh, sorry, got it. Yeah, so if you go to the caccventura.com website, on the left side, I haven't clicked through all the donate stuff on my phone. I've only done it on a computer. So thanks for letting us know. We'll take a look at getting mobile optimized.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so next I have the pleasure of introducing Melissa Baffa, who is the Executive Director of the Ventura Land Trust. Okay.
so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share what we are up to at the Ventura Land Trust. We have a presentation that'll be coming up on the screen here. Ventura Land Trust is a 501c3 nonprofit that was founded in 2003 as the Ventura Hillsides Conservancy. So you may know us by two names. We own and manage close to 4,000 acres, mostly here around the Ventura region. We do have a couple of preserves that are a little bit far flung in other places in Ventura County as well. Our mission is to protect the land, water, wildlife, and scenic beauty of the Ventura region for the benefit of current and future generations. And that future generations piece is a big part of what we're doing. What that means is that the decisions that we're making are rooted in forever. And so we have to be very specific, very deliberate. We are a science-based conservation organization. And so we really do take our time and think through things very carefully, because it's very hard to give something to the community like a new trail and then have to take it back because we realize we put it in the bad place. So we definitely take our time with these types of decisions. Next slide. I think I covered that. Next slide. You know, not everybody is into open space. Some people really would like to prefer that nature stays at a distance. Maybe they don't like dirt, they don't like snakes or spiders or other things. So I always like to talk about this slide because there's always that, well, what's in it for me? Right? So if you're not into open space, you're not into hiking, you don't really care about nature so much, what's in it for you? Well, there is actually some benefit to having open space in your community, even if you don't personally like to go out and enjoy it. So habitat preservation, incredibly important for preserving biodiversity. That is what supports life on our planet. And of course, the ability for room to roam, for animals to move within wildlife corridors. Here's a big what's in it for me. If you live adjacent to open space that's publicly accessible, you might see a spike as much as 10% in your property values. You can tout that. So increased property values. Of course, recreation, protection of our watershed and our aquifers, including reducing urban runoff. So if you like to swim or surf or bodyboard, then not having a bunch of trash and whatnot there in the lineup with you is very helpful. And carbon sequestration and reducing heat islands. That's that phenomenon where if you've got a lot of cement and asphalt, they absorb heat all day long. And then at night when things are supposed to be cooling off, instead all that heat is radiating back out. And it puts us in this kind of deadly loop of continuously having to run air conditioners, putting more carbon in the atmosphere, warming things up even more. Next slide, please. So the two big preserves that you may be familiar with here locally are Harmon Canyon Preserve and Mariano Rancho, and I'll be talking about those mostly today. Harmon Canyon opened in June of 2020. It's 2,123 acres. And there are two new trails at Harmon Canyon. How many of you have been to Harmon Canyon at all? Yes, you guys are my people. Okay, how many of you have been on the new trails? Ah, okay. So, you know, it's hot. Get out in the morning, go out and visit those new trails. They're pretty epic. Getting a lot of good feedback on them. Next slide, please. Now, one thing that you know is that the back part of Harmon has been closed since those January storms. You probably know, since so many of you have been to Harmon, that our soils around here are highly erosive. I mean, we are talking sandy, silty dirt that you put a little bit of water on it and that stuff moves. And so we had so much damage the past couple of years. You know, last year we got the back of the canyon finally fixed and it was open for what, a couple months, and then the rains came and closed it again. So in case you're a little impatient, wondering why aren't we getting that back part of the canyon open, that main road that goes through Harmon Canyon, SoCal Edison has an easement over that road to be able to access their power infrastructure within Harmon Canyon. that road needs to be repaired to their specifications so their heavy equipment can get through. So we have to wait. Don't repeat this, but I have heard that we may be seeing some movement in terms of Edison coming in and starting to repair that road. Maybe this month, probably more like next month. So fingers crossed that actually happens and we can get that back part of Harmon open again, because I know you're eager. Next slide, please. And again, you know, it's really, this is our geologic legacy. We used to be underwater. As a matter of fact, we used to be not only underwater, but down around San Diego. And a big chunk of land broke off, came up and slammed right into our coastline here. That's why we have those east-west transverse mountain ranges and that high rate of uplift. I've actually talked with a geologist who said that our uplift is so quick that we ought to be about as tall as the Himalayas, but our erosion is quicker. So we are eroding faster than we are uplifting. So that's why we don't have the Himalayas in our backyards. Next slide. Now the big one, Mariano Rancho. Mariano Rancho was acquired actually by VLT about 6 months before Harmon Canyon was finally brought in for a landing. But at the time, we were working on Harmon Canyon, and I say we, the royal we, because I wasn't actually on staff yet at that point. I was a volunteer. And so the organization was working to bring Harmon Canyon in for a landing after 10 years of negotiations. And so they kept the acquisition of Mariano very quiet. As a matter of fact, I have in my office a folder that's labeled Voldemort Capital Campaign because it was the property that shall not be named. So it was the worst kept secret in Ventura for a while. Yes, that we had acquired it. So we are projected to open to the public sometime next year. I don't have a firm date on that, but we're doing a lot of work right now to get it ready. So we're surveying the preserve boundaries, conducting biological surveys, very important to know what's there, addressing invasive species. You know, we kind of triage and start with some of the ones that are the worst. So mustard, probably never going to get rid of it. But things like tamarisk or castor bean, or there's this strange grass that we found up on Mariano Rancho, we can start to address some of those invasives. We reestablished the fire road in partnership with Ventura County Fire Department. Thankfully, that one runs from Hall Canyon to Lincoln behind the homes there. We're building out the service area and then eventually the parking lot, or as we call it in my neck of the woods, the natural surface trailhead enclosure. And that will be at Hall Canyon Road. We're working with our easement holders on repairing storm damage and mitigating environmental impact. We just completed our annual defensible space clearance. There's quite a lot of homes, several dozen homes right there along the property boundary. So we have to do a lot of clearance. And of course, meeting with community members and stakeholders and letting you all know what we're up to. And next slide. So challenges we've talked about, highly erosive soil and very steep slopes. We have a large number of easement holders on this property, SoCal Gas, SoCal Edison, communications companies, you name it. I mean, we've got people crisscrossing and accessing that property all the time. Generations of grazing and other extractive use have degraded the property, including introducing invasive species. And we have a lot of abandoned infrastructure, including some abandoned communications infrastructure, a bunch of abandoned oil transportation pipelines crisscrossing the property, trying to figure out how to find the money to get that stuff removed. If we want to get it removed, because that might be a big Pandora's box to try and start extracting some of those things. Historical trespass. We know that the community has utilized this property for generations. So we kind of look the other way right now if you go and visit it. You know, we're not chasing anybody off the land. Of course, wildfire concerns because it is adjacent to so many homes and we all are still very sensitive after the Thomas fire. Those intense winter storms, and then the biggie is balancing conservation and recreation. People are the toughest part of the work that we do. Even well-meaning people who bag up the dog's poop and then put it on the side of the trail and say, I'll pick it up when I come back, and forget, right? So it would be an interesting stat to see how many pounds of bag poop we pick up every year. I'm not going to make my staff track that though. And so things that we are working on in the planning stage, right? We're thinking about trails. There's a number of social trails that already exist there. A social trail is basically an unofficial trail that people either, you know, kind of cut with their feet or their bikes or even shovels. So we have to decide, are we going to allow those to continue? If they're passing through sensitive habitat, or if they are in typical human fashion, I want to go from point A to point B, and that's the shortest distance. Water likes to go the shortest distance too. So that means that that social trail is highly erosive. So we may need to eliminate some of the trails that are there. Additional access points. Right now, I can for sure say we will have access at Hall Canyon Road. There are other places that the community has enjoyed access. Those cross private property. So we have to talk to those private property owners and come to an agreement whether we are going to legalize that access point or whether we're going to make it go away. Fencing along the property boundary. WUI stands for Wildland Urban Interface. So fencing the WUI boundary because we want to make sure that we don't have hikers and preserve visitors wandering off the preserve and into people's yards. We want to make sure that our staff can adequately go in and perform restoration, invasive species work, etc. And we have to make sure that if there's any encroachments that are currently existing on our property, that those are removed, and the fence will make sure that they don't come back. So those are all important reasons why we have to fence that property boundary. And an exciting one is we are actually going to be mounting a community campaign where we solicit input for renaming the preserve. So it may be if the community feels like Mariano is the best fit, it'll stick. But otherwise, we'll see what comes out of that process. We'll be announcing it next month at our Wild and Scenic Film Festival. And so be watching and listening for that. As I mentioned, our decision-making process is science-based. It's intentionally deliberative. So far, we've hosted 5 community meetings. 3 of those were recorded. They were in a format that lent itself to recording. They are available on our website. And we also have a frequently asked questions page on our website. So that QR code that's in the upper corner there will take you to our frequently asked questions page if you've got it. And if you've got a question there that isn't on our page, there's a button for you to submit your question. We are also in the midst of conducting some targeted outreach to the Spanish-speaking community on the west side, Ventura, because as we were doing our community meetings, we were bringing in interpreters, we were creating Spanish slides, et cetera, and people weren't showing up. And we realized, okay, we're not so good at this. We need to bring in some partners who are good at this kind of outreach with this segment of the community. And so we're partnering with CACC to do that outreach this summer. They've actually been conducting some surveys, and they'll be conducting some focus groups next week, I believe. And just real quickly, we do have a number of different programs available through Ventura Land Trust. We know that different people connect with nature in different ways. Not everybody wants to go bombing down a hill on their mountain bike at, well, 15 miles an hour is the speed limit. Let's just say 15 miles an hour. Some people like to sit and paint or write poetry or take a nature walk and learn about the plants that they're seeing or the birds that they're hearing. And so we offer a variety of different programs, and we're trying to hit many different segments of the community where they are at. So one of the things, we have the environmental speaker series that's free. It's quarterly. Our next one is in October. We do free guided hikes in English and in Spanish. We have a Pride hike coming up in partnership with Diversity Collective for Pride Week. That will be August 15th. We encourage everybody to come out and join us. It's a very joyous experience. And we have many different types of fee-based programs. All of those are available if you go to our website, venturalandtrust.org/events. Just look for the events tab. And next slide. We do have the Wild and Scenic Film Festival next month. I have a couple of postcards out on the table outside. I also have stickers out there. I can't tell you how ridiculously excited I get when I see them on cars around town. My kids make fun of me, but I get really excited. So if you are so inclined, if you're a sticker on your car person, please grab one and slap it on your car because it makes me really excited. Something else that we do, the used gear garage sale. If you've got outdoor gear collecting the wrong type of dust sitting in your garage, we ask you to donate that. We host that at Topa Topa. That'll be next April. So hold on to it for a minute, but come out, it's like, you know, January, February. And then we have lots of volunteer opportunities available if you are interested in getting involved as a volunteer. And next slide. So we ask you, of course, since I am a nonprofit, I'm going to ask you to donate. I'm going to hit you up for some money. As a matter of fact, we are conducting both a membership campaign called My VLT, specifically targeted at people who have fallen in love with Harmon Canyon Preserve right now. And we have a matching campaign that every dollar that's donated up to $55,000 this summer gets doubled. So you can become a member and effectively double that donation to us. You can volunteer, connect us to your community. If you have an opportunity for us to connect, please invite us. And of course, if you're hiking in Harmon, trespassing on Mariana, and you want to talk about what a great place it is, tag us so that we see that. So we're at Ventura Land Trust. And with that, I think the last slide is just my contact info, and I would love to take any questions.
We have a hand raised from Maryland. We'll have that for our first question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
We hear you.
All right, well, I'm a lifelong Venturan, and many of you know I'm a huge fan of the Two Trees. And so I heard a rumor that the Two Trees got replanted, or also, as some of you know, I've been wishing and hoping for some sculptures to reproduce the ones that we remember as our city logo. So I'd like to know what the status is of the Two Trees.
Well, first of all, hi, Marilyn. It's good to see you and hear you. So Two Trees is interesting. We have the left tree of Two Trees, and Rich Atmore has the right tree of Two Trees. The property boundary goes right between the two trees. We have the dead tree. Atmore has the live tree, which he has replanted, I think, at least twice now. And so we don't currently have any plans, Marilyn, for Two Trees. We understand that it is such an important landmark for our community, and I love it too. And it's a really, really helpful landmark for me to look up at the hills and go, look, there's our land from there to there. So we do recognize that it is something that's on the list, but I have to be honest, it's kind of low on the priority list right now, but it is definitely on the list. We recognize that it's important, and we would love to see that revitalization of that landmark as well.
Well, thank you. One more comment. I have art consulting in my background, and I have contacts with several sculptors who might be, including a retired professor from Pepperdine, who might be glad to have input and discuss the possibility of sculpture. And I won't keep on now. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, if we do head that direction, I know who to reach out to. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a minor thing, but in the list of activities and hikes, you have one called Glow in the Night or something. What is that
Yeah.
about?
So we host our glow hikes usually in the fall, and that's where we actually have our naturalists go out with a small group with UV black lights. And because some of the critters that are out at night, particularly scorpions, glow under a black light. You don't have to touch it, you don't have to handle it. You can stand way far back and go, cool, not for me, but cool. But it's pretty awesome. Yeah. Yes. Any other questions?
Is there a problem with getting water to the trees? And that's why they're done.
Yeah, so yeah, the trees, so the trees that were up there originally are actually eucalyptus trees, so they're non-native. So that would be one thing that, should we want to reestablish trees, we probably wouldn't be looking to replant eucalyptus trees. So it wouldn't have the same silhouette that it's had. But yes, water is a big issue to get up there. For Atmore and his crew, right, it's a UTV or it's a horse ride or something, so it's a little bit easier. For us to come up from our side, there's not a good, well-established trail. So it would have to probably be in partnership with the Rancho Ventura Conservation Trust that we would have to do that. But yeah, water would be a big one. And usually it takes 2 to 3 years for a tree to get established. And certainly you're not planting something really big to begin with. Yeah.
Barbara, what say you?
We might have to talk to the Ventura Tree Alliance about that, right? Okay. Any other questions?
I wanted to thank you for being here tonight. I hope everybody here appreciates how remarkable it is that we have Harmon Canyon and Mariano Rancho, and that's just 4 years. There was a lot of work going into that before those 4 years, but the 4 years of expansion at
Ventura Land Trust.
Ventura Land, you got to be thinking about the tree alliance.
Yeah.
At Ventura Land Trust, having to take that organization and turn it into a very professional, well-managed, well-run organization that can get the money, that can get grant money, that can make these multi-million-dollar deals is amazing. And so congratulations on that.
Thank you. But, I do have to absolutely share the credit. It wasn't me, it wasn't my staff, it wasn't my current board, it's our community. This has been coming for 20 years since the founding. And so I will thank you on behalf of the many hundreds of volunteers and staff members and others who have made this possible, and the many thousands of donors who have made this possible. So again, as a nonprofit leader, I have to say it, we are only successful with your support. So again, I would really encourage you to find a way to support our work if you enjoy it. Become a member, donate, sponsor, talk to me. We have all sorts of ways you can get involved. But thank you, Mike.
And there's one other thing I'd just like to point out for everybody. I hope you appreciate it. One of the things that is unique about Ventura is those hillsides. There are not a lot of places in coastal California that have hillsides like that. And what I find amazing is we have the range of experiences, right? We have a Royal Verde Park with an accessible playground. We've got the Botanic Gardens, and we've got Harmon Canyon and Mariano Rancho. These are, if you want to spend some time in the hillsides, any way you want to do it, we've got you covered in Ventura. And so it's, again, thank you so much for doing all this. Thank you for being here tonight, Melissa.
Thank you. Yay. All right. Appreciate it. Thank you, Melissa. That was really great. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, but before we do that, I want to take a moment to thank CAPS for letting us use this great room and all their really nice equipment, and specifically Patrick Davidson, Donald McConnell, and Manny Reynoso were very instrumental in
showing us how to use all this equipment and making sure that we have the room reserved. So thank you, Caps. And now we'll take a 5-minute break. Oh, Kathy?
Could everyone please sign the sheet out front so we know who attended tonight? Because I forgot to make a sign-in sheet. So thank you, Russell. Yeah, Russell did it.
Thanks. All right, if you guys want to take a 5-minute break, use the restroom, get some water.
If you're holding the microphone.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started right now. All right. Jim. All right. We're going to get started, everyone. All right. So so our next speaker was slated to be Ventura County. We were slated to get a Ventura County wildfire update. It's a great time to do that, but unfortunately our next speaker is not here. They do have a great excuse. They are fighting a fire in Maricopa Highway. Yep, there you go. And we wish them a speedy and safe conclusion to the fire. We hope they can put it out quickly. So I hope everybody is paying attention to the fact that we're in fire season, cleaning the brush away from their house. It's so important right now. Anyway, I do want to move on to our next speaker, which is Mike Johnson. He's going to give us a city council update. Mike?
All right. Hello, everybody. It's good to see everybody. So I'm Mike Johnson. I am the council representative for this district, if you don't know that already. It's nice to see everybody. I want to give you an update on a couple of things. One, of course, is that it is campaign season, and that is why Councilmember Halter is not up here giving the city council update, because the community council very wisely doesn't want to be used as a place for campaign. And so because Councilmember Halter is up for re-election, and because I've chosen not to run for re-election, that's why I'm here. So I will not be running for council. It has been a lot of work, and I have gotten a lot done, and it has been wonderful meeting so many people. But I'm not necessarily the right person for the job anymore. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so there are a couple things I wanted to talk about. Quickly, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I don't know if we've talked about what's happened with the fire department and all the great stuff that has happened since I got elected. And a couple of those things they're all kind of together. They all kind of came together as a package. And I'll just be frank with you. The fire department has always wanted more positions, more firefighters. My position on that has always been, we can do that, but we need to look at the service model. We need to at least study the service model and make sure that we're doing it efficiently. And so what we have done is we are moving ahead with the new fire station, and we have adopted 2 paramedic rigs, 2 paramedic trucks. One of them is at our Fire Station 3, right there by Buena High School. That's where one of the paramedic rigs is. It's a 2-person rig, and it's able to get to places faster. But because we're doing all this, we've got the paramedic rigs, and we're moving ahead with the next fire station. We added 13 sworn firefighters, which is the biggest expansion we've had in the department since the 80s. And so I'm really proud. That is one of the things I'm really proud of during my time at City Council. And I will tell you, because I got Daisy Dog and we walk by the fire department all the time. And what I love to hear, I will tell you that as somebody who is, as soon as I got elected, and I was saying we need to be looking at things like paramedic squads, that wasn't a universally acclaimed idea. And so now that we have some and we're working, I mean, it's sort of a pilot program, but everybody I've talked to has said it's been so wildly successful and everybody loves them. And that the biggest complaint we have about them right now is that we've only got 2 of these. And all the other stations would love to have them as well. So I just wanted to bring that up because we mentioned the fire department. Okay, so let's see. I wanted to talk briefly about e-bikes. Because Jim, you said something that enforcement is the only option, and I don't think that's the case. There are other options, and I'm not, honestly, I'm not, no offense, I'm not a big fan of saying education. But I do think there are ways that you can deal with infrastructure to make it so that it's no longer appealing for somebody to ride fast on a bicycle. And I had proposed some of these things when we were looking at closing off Main Street to bikes. I think what we're going to have to do on the promenade is figure out ways so that if you are riding a bike fast, you have to stop. You have to maneuver around something. It's not just a clear shot. And that's a way that we can absolutely slow things down because the issues on the promenade are going to get worse. And I say this as somebody, I love my electric bike. And I say this as somebody who was once injured on a path with just a regular bike. Because what happened was, this was in San Jose, and I'm just walking along, and I just fall over, my face got all skinned up. Somebody was riding their bike, and they had their dog on a leash. And so he passed me on one side, and the dog passed me on the other. Oh. So there are always those issues. There are always those issues. I will also say, you know, that awful thing that happened where the kids, to celebrate the middle schoolers, to celebrate their graduation, were, you know, awful. Awful. It's not caused by e-bikes. Once upon a time, it would have been, yeah, they were on skateboards or they were riding their parents' buggies late at night or something. But absolutely, you know, the city has got to, and all cities have to do this, have to address, and I think it has to come through infrastructure because we can't afford to have somebody enforcing the bike rules on Main Street and the promenade and all these other places. But so as we look at what's next for the promenade, and this is something the city has been doing, what's next for the promenade, there was instruction given to staff, economic development staff, to reconsider the promenade. I think one of the things that must include is designing it in a way that is not amenable to riding at 15 or 20 miles an hour. And we could make it a fantastic place. It's just as long as we're thoughtful about it. So it is July. That means that in June, since the last meeting, council adopted its budget and its capital improvement plan. And the budget this year was, you know, for the city plus the water department, just $530 million. So it's a big job. It's a big budget. Some highlights. You probably know this, but we have put so much more money to streets and sidewalks. Things were bad. One of the things that we had to do really was get a new city manager. And now we have quadrupled the amount of money that we're spending on these things. We went from spending in some years, you know, $70,000 a year on sidewalks to now we're spending over $1 billion a year on sidewalks. You know, spending a couple $1 million a year on road improvements to spending tens of millions of dollars on road improvements. One of the limiting factors has just been the weather. There are road projects that did not happen this last winter because it was just too wet. And so a lot of things have been delayed. Another constraint has been materials. It's been very hard to get asphalt. This is the case throughout the Western United States. After we had those rainstorms, the reason we could not do, I kind of pushed for that pothole blitz a year and a half ago. This winter, we couldn't really do it just because every other city in California was facing the same thing, and you just couldn't get the materials. And so you probably saw that we would fill potholes with what's called cold pack, which is basically just gravel and bitumen. And you just do that to try to prevent somebody from, you know, their wheel goes into it and causes an accident, but it doesn't last. The next time comes, it washes away. So the third constraint that we've had on the big projects is just engineering. We only have so many engineers working at any given time. We have a lot of engineers that are splitting their time working on water projects as well. But so we are moving ahead with a lot of big projects. What's happening on Telegraph Road, as you probably know, is a big water project. And so the street is not going to look good until the water project is done and the street has been all buttoned up. And then it will look nice again. Loma Vista over by the fields should be this year as well. That'll be getting a slurry seal. But so we're really putting a lot more money into that stuff. I will say, when people ask me what we're doing with parks, I say, well, let me tell you everything that we're doing about the sidewalks and the streets. And unfortunately, I would say our parks department is drastically underfunded for what they do and the services that people expect. But that was really just one of the decisions council had to make. And part of that was a stitch in time saves nine. And so while I would say the parks are underfunded, we are doing some things differently so that public works money is being used in parks. So for example, you will see things getting fixed at Cemetery Park. That is being handled by Public Works instead of coming out of the Parks Department budget. Same thing at Camino Real, which was crazy. Like you couldn't ride your bike on the streets because of the craters. So we are making some improvements, but I will tell you, don't expect the city to like open up a bunch of new pickleball courts and tennis courts and things like that, because that just wasn't the priority of the budget. A couple things before I move on to water. There will be some ballot initiatives. Council has decided to put a couple things before the voters in November. One of them is better compensation for city council members. As you probably know, I get $600 a month. And I can't make any more than that unless there's a change to the city charter. And so what will be before the voters, it will authorize the city council to essentially vote themselves a pay raise using the formula that the state recommends for most cities. And it's a population-based formula. And what it would mean for a city council member would probably be about $1,800 or $1,900 a month instead of $600 a month. So that will be going before the voters. I support that. Honestly, you know, my misgivings about it is that it's probably still not enough. Unlike most cities, we are a full service city. We don't contract with the county fire. We don't contract with the sheriffs. We're not getting our water from Metropolitan. If it were up to me, council would probably have been making more like, you know, $4,500 a month. But you take what you can get. But so I support that one. There is a ballot initiative that I do not support, and you will see me campaign against it. And this comes from a promise that I made to voters. When Eric Nazarenko resigned, that was right after I was sworn in. And when he resigned, that left a vacancy on the city council. And of course, it's a district thing, so then it's a district. And so when we looked at the options, I wanted to call a special election. The city attorney came back and said, your charter does not allow you to do that. So we appointed Jeanette Sanchez Palacios, which is fine. She's from the district. We had a whole process. I told voters, we will fix this. And so I kept saying, we need to have a charter amendment to fix what we do in case of a vacancy. And I am so proud that when I brought that up in our goal setting meeting in January, my colleague said, yes, absolutely. The problem is what they did was they came up with a charter amendment that prohibits council from ever holding a special election. And so I will be campaigning against that. I think when it's a district, if something were to happen to me, I think the voters in the district should have the say, not representatives of other districts. I will tell you, you probably know that I had some council members who were trying to do everything they could to get rid of me, to either kick me out of office or to make me want to quit. And if you have the ability to make somebody quit and replace them together, to me, that's kind of frightening. I will be very vocal in my opposition to this. But those are the ballot initiatives. Okay, now the hot button issue, which is net zero. This, okay. Let me explain before you start throwing things. So net zero is a fee that we charge any new development, whether it's a commercial development or a residential development. If it's a residential development, it's about, I'm going to say $2,200 for an apartment and about $3,000 for a single family home. And then for any sort of commercial development, it's a square footage based on the type of business. So, for example, we had a business downtown that wanted to expand. It's not in the Main Street Moves area. It's outside the Main Street Moves. They're very successful. They wanted to add a patio. It was going to be about 500 square feet, which is not big. And it was going to cost them $100,000 a piece for net zero. So of course they're not going to do that. One of the things it does for housing is when you have a fixed cost like that, and it applies whether it's a luxury house or a condominium or an apartment or affordable housing. When you have a fee like that and it's a baked in fixed cost, regardless of square footage of the place, regardless of the number of bedrooms, when you do that, you make it a lot harder to build anything at the lower end of the market. And so we in Ventura, our housing crisis, and we have a housing crisis, it's not just affordable housing, but it's also what I call what other people call naturally occurring affordable housing. And you see this when you see that every new apartment in Ventura seems to be going for, $3,500 or more per month. So Doug Halter and I brought a policy consideration to repeal net zero, and council voted 7-0 to repeal net zero with a moratorium, an immediate moratorium on collecting any fees. And so we just did that. Now, this will affect your water rates because the money that net zero is collecting was going to pay for the water pure project. So that's a tough sell. Now, first I will say legally, I'm not sure that our net zero fee would stand a challenge based on a recent Supreme Court decision. Secondly, we have reached a point with the water pure plan that we have, as a council, been told that you have no choice. You have to go ahead with this, regardless of anything else. And so we get to a point then where legally we find ourselves charging a fee to a developer to fix an existing deficiency in our infrastructure, which we cannot do. And then the third thing is, and I didn't bring this up at council, I was so thrilled that it passed. But I will say this, we collect, let's say, $1 million a year typically, well short of expectations. And in fact, well short of expectations because when the water department made their projections on what net zero would collect, all of a sudden, a lot less development, a lot fewer new businesses, a lot fewer business expansions, a lot fewer new housing starts happened in Ventura. So instead of collecting $2.5 million a year, now if we collect $1 million, that's a lot. I don't have firm numbers. I don't think they'll ever give me firm numbers. I'm going to guess that of that $1 million, $250,000, $300,000 went to just administering the net zero fee, maybe more. So when we look ahead at water pure itself is going to cost about, at current costs, $36 million a year. This will, that 36 million, they were figuring, net on the net zero, let's call it $600,000. That's what we're talking about. So I really do believe that even just the effects from the economic growth from the city from doing net zero will be better for the ratepayers, because the position we're going to get in with water pure is we're going to have too much water, and we're going to be in a position where we need people to buy it. That's where we will be. So discouraging development from using water is not the right strategy when you are building a new water processing plant that could deliver 25% of your water. So that's where we're at with net zero. The water rates, we had a little bit of a water rate study come to council. It was pretty vague. I went ahead and this was the a meeting around June 14th, June 13th. I made my own spreadsheet and generated my own graph showing what is anticipated to happen to water rates. If the water pure project, which is currently $670 million, just stays at $670 million. And for the most part, you're looking at your water bills just about tripling by 2035. And so we know everybody's water bills have already gone up quite a bit just in the last few years, but we're looking at them going up quite a bit more. I will say, and Jim Ackerman from the Water Commission is here, one of the things I want to do is I want us to rethink one of our other big projects, and that's the state water in Utah. Because if we can save the ratepayers tens of millions of dollars on that project, then I think we need to do that. So that's kind of the update on what's happened in the last 6 weeks. I will say council is now on break, and but before I take any questions, I do want to say this. Council is so much better than it was just a couple years ago. And some of that is having new people on council, and a lot of it is having new people at City Hall. Council has really stepped up and has done a couple things just this last year that were out of character. And that was because council, as I put it in one of the meetings, council finally put on its legislative pants. And what that was on STVRs. And it was like, we have been I have been attending meetings on STVR since 2016. It is time for council to stop talking and just tell staff to do it. And so we did. The net zero fee, there was talk, well, maybe we should talk about this, we should go to the Water Commission. I understand a couple of my colleagues wanted to say, well, let's make that something we talked about at the goal setting meeting next January. But no, council decided to make a decision and do it. And what I have seen as well with my colleagues is some of my colleagues, and there's a learning curve. Some of my colleagues are really coming to understand that the stuff that makes it to council is almost all of it is by definition not an easy call. If it was easy, they wouldn't be taking up council's time. And so we are having very thoughtful conversations. We're having 3 meetings a month now, so we have a little more time and space. We have closed session meetings. By having 3 closed session meetings now to talk about legal stuff, we're able to get more into the details. And so I am going to miss this side of council. What I have seen over this year, I am really going to miss that. So, Bill Ayu, our new city manager, is great. Council seems to be firing it all also. And there's been a lot of turnover in staff, but one of the things that has not been happening is we no longer have people coming on, we don't have people leaving. So things at City Hall are good. So I don't know what time it is.
It's 8:35.
So I got
We
plenty
have
of time.
time.
All right, so questions? I'm pretty good at filibustering. I can keep talking and then go to questions. If you got a microphone, let Russell ask a microphone.
It doesn't seem that long ago that we were very worried about whether we had enough water and about building more homes because we didn't have enough water, and net zero was part of that. I couldn't help but notice, and I don't want to misquote you, but in the middle of your explanation, I thought I heard you say we're going to have too much water.
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
Talk a little about that, would you?
I would be happy to. So in 2016, this was after the water shortage and the water shortage. Right? So let's go back to the water shortage. 2010, 2012. This was so the city of Ventura was using 18,000, 19, 20,000 acre feet of water per year. 18, 19, 20,000 acre feet per year. 20,000 acre feet per year. We went through the drought, and so the city set up the water shortage rate task force. And one of the things they did was they set the water rates to deal with the fact that there is a shortage of water. And so they increased the water rates. And of course, we encourage people to conserve water. And we introduced all sorts of conservation programs, replace your sod, get low flow toilets. We have all been, and most of us have been in community council meetings where they hand out little gadgets to put on your sink so that your sink uses less water, hot water recirculators, smart irrigation controllers, water audits for your home. So somewhere between those programs and increasing the cost of water, people started conserving water. So in 2016, when we passed net zero, we thought that water use would continue to climb and that we'd get like using 20,000 acre feet per year. This last year, we used about 12,500 acre feet per year. That is an amazing feat of conversation. And there are still a lot of people growing ornamental sod in the front and backyards of their house. I will say one unintended consequence of water here and the rates that are coming is that people are going to use even less water because their bills are going to go up. One of the things you all maybe noticed when we went through the prior water shortage and the increased rates, the water shortage rates, was that you use less water and your bill stayed the same. That's because somewhere between 90 and 95% of what you pay each month in your water bill pays for infrastructure, not the per unit thing of water. We use unit pricing of water to try to make, because if you don't, then people just, their water floods. We use it to make sure that people are using a reasonable amount. But so we find ourselves in a situation now where we have today water supplies of 18,000 acre feet per year. We're using 12. Water Pure is projected to bring in 4,200 acre feet per year. So we will be taking less water from the aquifers. We will be taking less water from the river, but we will not be in a position where we have a water shortage. And so what happens is you have a certain capacity, and you can adjust how much you take from the aquifers, you can adjust how much you take from Lake Casitas, but we have to use the water that comes out of Ventura Water. That's part of the consent decree. If I had suggested in the past, could we save money by just pumping that water and just not putting it in the water, pumping it in the aquifer, just dump it. No, we cannot. We have to put it to beneficial use. It's going to be by far the most expensive water that we have. It's on a per unit basis, it's going to be 12 times what our cheapest water supply is. Because we're talking about we're talking about maybe $10,000 an acre for the water, as opposed to what we can do with when we pump water out of the aquifer and treat it ourselves. It's not great water. Water pure will not be great water. We're talking more like $1,000 an acre foot. So and this is important too. I need to say this because I know something else was said in this room a while ago. The water that we're going to get out of water pure is not going to be better water. It is not going to improve our water quality. It will improve the quality of the water in the aquifer, but we're not taking that water out. We're taking water out somewhere else. And so it will be adding more groundwater to our portfolio. And we're going to take wastewater and we're going to treat it to something that is just like so close to pure water. It is not just meeting the federal and state guidelines. We're talking like pure water. And we're just going to pump that into the aquifer. Then we're going to go somewhere else and take very hard water out of the aquifer, and we're going to treat it probably to just the minimal amount to make it meet federal standards on hardness, and that's what will be delivered. So we're going to be using that water. We will be taking less hard water out of the aquifer. We are already taking less water from Casitas, and we are already taking less water from the river. The state water intertie, we do not count that as a new source of water. The promise for the state water intertie for that $50 million is it's much better water than we pump out of the ground. And on the east end, people have water that is very hard. Like I live by Moina, people further east have even harder water, right? The state water, when it delivers water, will be delivering better water. I'm just saying that instead of spending the $50 million to build a pipeline from Camarillo, we could build a plant, we could upgrade a treatment plant so that the water that we pump out, we just treat it more so that it's not so hard. And we could do that much cheaper. So to get back to your question, that's why I say, yes, we are going to have too much water. When at a recent council meeting, and I didn't bother answering this question, one of my colleagues asked me, why are the water bills so high in Santa Barbara? Well, the reason water bills are so high in Santa Barbara is because, as you remember, they built that desal plant. And then it never went into operation. They still had to pay for it. Even though it was not producing any water, they still had to pay for it. And then they restarted it, which is great, but the cost of restarting it doubled and then tripled. Because overbuilding water is the most expensive mistake you can make. You have like your first source of water, which is your cheapest, right? For us, we're talking the river, right? The river is the cheapest water. And you've got Casitas, and then you've got the water in the aquifer that has to be treated. Water pure is going to be very expensive. The state water project, it's not going to be as expensive as water pure, but it will be more expensive than any of our current sources of water. And we don't know how much water we'll actually be able to take in a given year from the state water project. So that's where I am on that.
If we return to a period of drought like we had before, an extended period, then we wouldn't have too much water. True or not true? Or we'd have just the amount of water that we need.
So we could take a real hit to our current water sources and be okay. If we're at 12,000 acre feet per year and we went through like immediately, let's say something happened and we could not take any water out of the ground. Let's say it was radioactive. We could squeeze the 12,000 down further if we had to. And it sounds like we wouldn't have to mandate things. We wouldn't have to say you cannot wash your car, you can't water your lawn. We do what we did last time is we just raised the rates. And all of a sudden people are like, maybe I don't need 6 avocado trees. So if there is an extended period of drought, we're not going to get water from the state anyhow. It's very rare that we're in a drought and the rest of the state has water. When there is a statewide drought, the water we would get from the state would be minimal or maybe even none at all. So, and you know, I do think that water pier is going to happen. We're told it has to happen, but we can't run it and just run it at 20% capacity for 20% of the cost. We can't do that. If there was a way to spend 20% of the capital and just run it at 20% and then build another 20% as needed, that would be great. But I don't think that's going to happen. Long term, I think people are going to give up their lawns. We are still at a point in the city where about 15%, and it's getting better, it used to be almost a quarter, 15% or so of our water is used for outdoor irrigation for ornamental purposes. So call that another, we could knock it down to 10. Probably pretty easily if people got rid of that. And long term, you know, we're going to have water pure and people won't need to, but it's going to cost you a lot of money to have that long. Okay, there has to be other questions.
We have about
a question on the.
Oh, good.
We have a question from the virtual audience from Bondio. Let's see.
Is it a Bondi?
You can there we go.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Bondi. I have
Hey.
4 minutes.
Okay. Did you say council did something about the short-term rental issue? I couldn't tell if that's what you said.
We did. I mean, what we did was we basically told staff to bring us a short-term vacation rental ordinance and stop all this talk about we're gonna. Okay, here's what happened. We have had short-term vacation rentals as a goal at council every year since before I was elected. And it keeps getting turned into like long conversations. So we said, we absolutely want to get this done. We moved it to the legal department because we thought moving it out of community development might help. And then the plan was we're going to hire a mediator, and I wasn't a fan of this, hire somebody that's known as a mediator to come in and figure out what the common ground is so that we can move forward. And that took a long time, and it took a lot of money. And he came back and he said, you absolutely have a lot of people with a lot of opinions, and so what you need to do is figure out a way to get them all in a room and figure out what the common ground is. Okay. So that was when I said, enough is enough. I appreciate that short-term vacation rental owners want to be part of the conversation. They keep saying, we need to be part of the process. We have a process, and the process is this. Things go to the planning commission, things go to the city council. We publish agendas, we publish staff reports. You can make public comments, you can come and speak on this, you can email your council members, you can show up to community council meetings and talk to them face to face. Council can just do something on STVRs. So we directed staff to come back to us with a couple ordinances that have already been approved by the California Coastal Commission, in cities somewhat like us. And let us just look at them and say, this one looks right. Here are the tweaks we want you to make. Now, they're doing that. Staff, we told staff, go ahead and meet with a limited number of people. We're not going to tell you who. Go ahead and meet with some people one-on-one or in small groups just to make sure that you understand what some of the issues are. And then just come to us and we'll just pass a freaking STVR ordinance. So that's what we're doing with STVR. I really do think we're going to have that finished within the next 8 months. I would be so happy if it happened before I left office, but I don't think it will. But that's where we are with STVR as well. My guess is that what we're looking at would be part of it is enforcement, but we're going to probably be looking at limitations on density and proximity. And we do that already, for example, with cannabis, right? You can't have a cannabis dispensary in certain areas, and you can't have too many in one area. So there will be some issues around density and proximity that we'll try to address. I don't see council ever like saying, well, you would have to shut down your current STVR. But we do have a problem in some areas with, there are some lanes in Pierpont where, let's say a quarter of the houses are second homes that are generally vacant, and another quarter of them are STVRs, which are generally vacant. So we have that issue. We also have an issue, and I don't know if council will deal with this. We have an issue with apartment building owners turning apartments into STVRs. And I, as a council member, it drives me crazy that somebody could come to us and say, we want to build an apartment building. And we say, yes, absolutely, we want apartments. And they say, okay, we're building apartments. And then we find out that they're keeping some of them for STVRs. We need to stop that from happening. And there's a difference between the housing stock, which are a house on Pierpont, which would cost you $4 million. That's one type of STVR. An STVR that's taking up what would be an apartment that's, $2,400 a month is a different product. Ma'am, do you have a microphone? I'm out of time.
So when it comes to short-term vacation rentals, I will just say that you know this because you sat on our 7-Eleven committee. Declining enrollment is a thing for our school district, and one of the impacts that we see is in the areas where short-term vacation rentals are very popular is where our population of students has most precipitously dropped. The beaches in Midtown being those places. So I think it is important that council address this. And I personally, as a landlord and someone who could turn properties into short-term vacation rentals and have not, think that there are some really good ones out there with, it has to be your primary residence for 6 months. That's what LA has, right? And it's really manageable because then you can allow people to have some extra income from a place that they don't need all year long, but you're not turning neighborhoods into hotels. Secondly, you brought up the issue of cannabis. And so I wanted to ask, has council received a report yet? There was a lot of talk about how dispensaries were going to generate a ton of money for the city. And that was the reason that we allowed them to be within a block of our schools. And so I was just curious if we have seen what that revenue stream looks like.
We have the cannabis dispensaries where PEG's putting in about 200,000. What we have seen from the existing ones is about that number. We only have 2. You may recall that we gave approval to 4 to move ahead. 2 have not moved ahead. Those 2 are at locations where there is a problem with the building or a problem with the lease, and they can't switch their cannabis license to another location. So far they are bringing in the money and they're causing problems.
I didn't vote for the cannabis ordinance. For the record, I did not serve on the 7-Eleven committee. I was on the declining enrollment committee, but I was talking today with somebody about some of the unfortunate decisions made by the 7-Eleven committee. But I gotta go.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you so much, Mike. As always, that's super informative, very helpful. I do want to, this is now our time for announcements. So I'm going to make a few announcements. If you have announcements to make, please just raise your hand. So first, the Ventura Botanical Gardens next free day is Friendship Day, and that's August 7th. Leashed dogs are welcome that day. Melissa already talked about the Wild and Scenic Film Festival, which is a wonderful community event. That's on August 24th. I also wanted to mention a great youth program. The Rubicon Theater has summer youth education programs, and they will be performing Fiddler on the Roof on July 26th, 27th, and Sunday, July 28th at 7 p.m. And there are still tickets available for these events. These are really fun events where kids are doing all the performing. And then the last show of the season, which also sounds like it could be a lot of fun, is their show Legally Blonde. And that's August 8th through 11th. That's $20 for adults. It's somewhat less for kids. But you should try to attend those. It's a good way to support our local cultural community, and it's also just a lot of fun. Our next meeting will be on Zoom only, and that is Wednesday, August 28th. Keep your eyes open for that candidate forum, and thank you all for coming tonight. Oh, Sabrina.
But two things, first day of school is August 14th, which is a week earlier this year than traditionally. So for those of you who are used to being able to cut through on Poli, that will be closed beginning on August 14th because our schools will be back in session. And then also, if you are interested, our sister city in Lourido, Baja California, we have a field trip planned for the Sister City Committee, October 21st through 28th. It's a great chance to visit. Their national park is a sister to our national park. Their mission is the sister to our mission, and they've been our sister city for over 20 years. And so it's a wonderful opportunity to go down, visit. The priest from the mission will come down with us, and just a really great cultural exchange. The tickets are cheap through the sister city. It's $400 round trip, which to Baja is a steal. So if you're interested in joining us, there's still spots.
I will add to that, I worked on the Sister City Committee for quite a few years, and the wildlife, the ocean wildlife down there is huge. It is a beautiful area to see natural ocean wildlife. So it should be a lot of fun. Okay, any other announcements? All right, well then let's call a close to this meeting. Everybody have a great evening and a wonderful weekend.
If anybody wants to rewatch the meeting, we'll have it on YouTube channel. Probably next week. Thanks, everyone. Wow.